In my previous video about the Prairieland Antifa protesters, rioters, assailants, whatever, I was talking about the anti-America mindset that they had. And I was algorithmed this short a few days ago by Senator Alyssa Slotkin. Now, Slotkin, 7 years ago, prior to being a senator, she had quite a lot of videos, one after another, of typical things, a lot of things about prescription drugs, lowering the prices of insulin and stuff like that, COVID mask and yada yada, Black History Month being honored there. But then things sort of changed 1 year ago, roughly 1 year ago, and she really started to pop off, and this is probably the Trump effect, if we can take a guess at it. Things about Doge, voting rights and such is what she's going on about now. But you can see this is all in the past year compared to what I had previously shown, just a handful of videos from the first few years of her channel, and then damn, she's a YouTuber now, which is actually surreal. There's quite a few senators and congressmen and people who are they're basically just YouTubers, which I'm fine with. I think it's kind of funny and sort of cool that they have a level of transparency in that regard, level of attachment to the people. But she has this particular video, this short, where she's asking a question to someone.
If a domestic violence shelter receives a federal grant, but they also post complaints about this administration's cutting of domestic violence funding, will that put them at risk of being labeled anti-American or threatening the reputation of this administration?
Senator, again, you're asking hypothetical questions.
You can't want the big job, but then not answer the big questions. I think the idea that First Amendment activities would be, quote, anti-American or threatening the reputation of this administration, you understand that you're creating a climate of fear around things that are actually, it's the opposite of anti-American. It's the most American thing in the world, the First Amendment. So I think you've raised a lot of concerns in your testimony over the last couple of days, but the idea that the administration would put that kind of language out there to intimidate and scare people out of freedom of speech is something that is the most anti-American thing I've seen in a long time.
But isn't it the government exercising their First Amendment, their freedom of speech? Why is it only freedom of speech when the Democrats do it? Why is it not freedom of speech when the Republicans do it? Mind you, she's a senator, so she is the government. So she's allowed to say bad things about the government, but the government's not allowed to say bad things about her. You're both the government, though. I mean, civil wars are fought. Like, you can be anti-nationalist and be part of the government. It's a very odd statement that she's making, and he says that it's a hypothetical, but it's not a hypothetical at all. It's a gotcha question. Let's just listen to it one more time.
If a domestic violence shelter receives a federal grant, but they also post complaints about this administration's cutting of domestic violence funding, will that put them at risk of being labeled anti-American or threatening the reputation of this administration?
So she specifically framed it as a domestic violence organization to make it seem as bad as possible. This is a gotcha question. She's trying to get him to say that he is in favor of domestic violence, basically. Like that's what it boils down to. She wants him to say that he's in favor of domestic violence to make the Republicans look bad. But it also makes America look bad. There's collateral damage with this. You're trying to win at any cost, and this double-edged sword, you're just going to end up falling on it because you're part of America, aren't you? So unless you are anti-American, unless you are trying to destroy America, then you shouldn't want to damage the reputation of America by making the current administration seem like they're supposed to be against helping out domestic violence organizations. That's an insane thing to ask someone, and I don't know what the setup was for this, and it doesn't matter because she's provided all of this in the form of a short. She's not given the context for this, so I presume that it is, as he said, a hypothetical in terms of this domestic violence organization that helps people who were beaten, presumably women and children, right? That's the idea. You're trying to make it sound like this guy wants women and children to be beaten, or else they're anti-American, right? That's the idea. This gotcha question is in ill taste, I think, and furthermore, she's not being censored. This fictional organization, they're not being censored from saying things, right? She just doesn't like the government calling them anti-American. It was this that made me realize that being accused of being anti-American is like the kryptonite for Democrats, because in so many ways they are anti-American. But I'll loop back to that. This gotcha question is something that I don't particularly like about her, her right here anyway. I'm totally in favor of the insulin and the low prices for prescription drugs and all of that. That's totally reasonable and great and awesome to fight for. But I want to cut to Congressman Brandon Gill, who also has basically a social media site on YouTube. It's again, it's sort of weird, but he is far right wing, as far as I can tell. I mean, I don't want to say like hard right or extreme right or anything, but he's patriotic right. He's got a flag behind him and everything.
Just starting out, do you believe that ageism is a form of bigotry?
Yes.
You do? Yeah, I thought so because you wrote an article saying that ageism in media discourse about Biden's reelection is an issue. Do you still believe that ageism was an issue in the past election cycle?
I believe that ageism in any form and in any context is a problem.
Do you believe that Americans who were concerned about Joe Biden's age were bigoted?
I did not say that in my article, nor do I claim that now.
You said that ageism is a form of bigotry.
Ageism is a form of bigotry.
Do you think that Joe Biden's age had a relation to his cognitive decline?
That is outside of my area of expertise.
Do you think those Americans were right to be concerned about Joe Biden's age?
Again, you're missing the point. The point is about the ageism itself.
Okay.
It isn't about Joe Biden.
We're going to move on. Do you believe that America should be a colorblind society? For instance, should people be treated differently based on their race? It's just a yes or no question.
It's not a yes or no question.
It's a yes or no question.
It is as I said in the beginning of my testimony, America
yes or
has
no
not
is
done
fine.
right by
Should
indigenous peoples, by black people.
And so that's a proper gotcha question. There's nothing technically wrong with a gotcha question if you can use it to pull back the armor that someone's hidden behind, if you can get rid of the smoke and mirrors. But when you've decided that you have to win at all costs, when you want to brand the Republicans, when America, the entire administration, as being in favor of abusing women and children, in favor of domestic abuse, that's not good for anybody. What Congressman Gill has just done here, he's exposed this man. He's talking about how ageism is bad. Well, if ageism's bad, then racism's bad. But he didn't say, do you think racism's bad? He said, do you think that people should be treated differently based off of their skin color? He's framed it in such a way that this guy has had to make the decision, do I give up my black privilege in favor of saying the right thing? Or do I hang on to it and undermine my own point about ageism? And just like that, he's ruined himself. That's a proper way to do the question. So it's not that it's wrong to approach it that way, but you do have to do it right. Now, I want to go back to Alyssa Slotkin here, because this is supposed to be about the concept of being pro-America or anti-America, and I do think that believing that you have some sort of higher calling because of your religion or your skin color or your gender identity or whatever is anti-nationalist, because the country cannot be bound together if one person thinks that they are superior to another. And I know it's a deliberately weird title by her there, the I'm from Planet 10. Just sitting on that is it is sort of awkward. So I'm just going to go ahead and let it play.
Well, you're struggling because you're from Planet 10. And I said, what is Planet 10? And he said, there are 47 Democrats in the Senate. 37 are from like hardcore blue states. 10 of you are from purple or red states, and you guys are on different planets. The way you think about problems, the way that you represent people, you have to represent a ton of folks who don't subscribe to the same political views. You guys just approach problems differently. And so I think this is why I've tried to spend a lot of time lately in the Midwest in general, because I think we are a practical, reasonable part of the country. And that stuff that works here, I think can work on the coasts, but not necessarily the other way around, right? If something's cooked up on the coast, I'm not sure it always works here.
So right there, she's basically just defined a third aspect of America. And more importantly, she's said that these three different aspects of America, the West Coast, the East Coast, and the center, they they simply do not get along. They can't get along. She specifically stated that ideologies, whatever they are, whatever legislation or whatever it is that come from the coast, cannot work in the middle. But she said that the middle is superior and that the middle's ideologies can work everywhere. So now we have this sort of like supremacist ideology sort of thing. I mean, it's not about like gender or skin color or anything in this particular case, but it's her, a senator, specifically stating that the country is divided. She specifically said that certain ideologies from the coasts, they're just not going to work in her place, in her neck of the woods, and her ideologies, what she believes in, are superior. So where do you go from there? As a Democrat, born in New York, and she's the Democrat of Michigan, a senator of Michigan. Where do you go there with that ideology, and how do you accuse the government of being like in favor of domestic abuse with your gotcha question in order to defend yourself, saying that you're pro-American when you just said that both the West and the East Coast don't work and that only the center works? I think like the vast majority of people live on the West and East Coast, so like I'm not really sure how that pans out mathematically. But I have a third person I want to talk about. They're not a congressman, they're not a senator. They're someone totally outside the wheelhouse here. Jay Vale, just some random YouTuber. I was algorithmed a video, a short by him some months ago, and I figured, you know what, why not add him into the mix, because he felt like an interesting third wheel to this. And interesting as it may be, 27 minutes before I started making this video, he had uploaded a new video, as you can see here, leaving the USA, the moment I stopped feeling American. I mean, I couldn't even make it up. It's perfect. Also, his bio, I'm the immigrant who's taking your jobs, because he's moved to the UK. Now, he's moved to the UK to be with his wife, as you can see here, why I left the US for the UK. But he's decided to make pretty much his entire channel about why the UK is superior to the USA and why the USA is basically evil, which I find interesting. He's got 1,000 videos, mostly through shorts, and while not all of them are about nationalities or anything, most of them are. His most recent short here, American and Brit discuss American fakeness. So just watch a little bit of a couple of his shorts. American exposes the dangers of Manchester, UK. He's decided to go to Manchester during the daytime. It's the middle of a city during the daytime in order to pretend to expose the fear-mongering of the evil right wing.
My fellow Americans that don't buy into the fake news media propaganda, I am coming to you live from Manchester. I barely survived the train trip up here because we all know how dangerous and inhumane public transport is.
There's plenty of actual videos of women, innocent women, being murdered on trains, and other people of just random men screaming and shouting and threatening to axe people and subways and stuff. Maybe not in the UK, but in the USA. Yeah, there's plenty of videos like that. Plenty of videos of people dying. You can actually watch them dying. But yeah, sarcasm helps.
I mean, just look at this road. Look at it. Do you see all of those buses instead of cars? This is what a third world country looks like.
Because the USA doesn't have buses, I suppose. So you've gone to Manchester. I don't really know how big Manchester is. I do, technically. I think it's 44.6 square miles. I looked it up. It's less than 1/6 the size of New York, and New York is half the size of London. But I don't live in the city, and I don't go to cities, so I don't really understand exactly how big that is. So I'm not sure if this is just like a lazy morning in Manchester or what. I couldn't really commentate on that. But is he suggesting that the UK is better because they have buses or more buses? I mean, the USA has buses. Cities have buses and trains and stuff. Like, the USA is huge. The USA, the contiguous USA, is the size of all of Europe as far as landmass goes. So obviously they don't have buses in every single square foot of the USA. I wish they did. I hate driving. I wish there was public transport everywhere. I mean, I could totally get behind that. But at the same time, it's unrealistic, and you'd have to cover the whole continent and pavement in order to do it. So it's totally unrealistic. But he seems to be saying that the UK has better infrastructure because they have buses and roads, which the USA doesn't have, apparently.
I can't believe that a nation would even think of investing in something like public transport when it could have another aircraft carrier instead.
Right. Why would a nation want to have the ability to defend itself? That would be crazy. I mean, who would ever expect someone to come invade the nation, especially after the nation's had wars and stuff and has enemies, like, the UK, for instance, has a lot of wars under its belt, a lot of enemies.
And not having the world's largest military clearly shows how dangerous this city is.
Yeah, well, funny he says that, because it's more like the UK doesn't have any military. I mean, it's basically non-functioning at this point. I don't really know what he's trying to get at. If there was no wars, then there would be no wars. If there was peace, then there would be peace. The problem isn't the good people, though. You don't need a military to stop me. You don't need a military to stop Jay Valey. He's not out there trying to cause problems, clearly. He's just minding his own business, I guess. I mean, I don't know why he hates America so much, but you don't need a military to stop us. It's the bad people you need a military to stop. And if you don't have a military, well, then who's going to protect your wife? And note that he has videos like this one, why we need more immigrants, not less. So, yeah, you might need a military. How extremists steal history and how to stop them. I don't know why people on the extreme left think that history has been rewritten by like neo-Nazis or something. Like, I can't remember his name, but some anti-capitalist rich guy who's also a nihilist anti-birther who has a wife. He's out there talking about how black people freed themselves from slavery and stuff like that. The left-wingers are always weird like this, but he wants more immigrants, not less. And then he's moved to the UK, which of course they have lots of immigrants. I don't think they have as many immigrants as the USA though, so that's a bit of an odd thing. But like I said, he moved there for the love of his life, according to him, so that makes sense. There is this short by him though. It's the last thing I want to cover here.
The world is getting pretty tired of us Americans. The United States has caused so many problems worldwide over the last century. The Great Depression,
Hey, why start at the last century?
for example, started in the United States and affected the entire world. Now, granted, it wasn't the US alone that caused the world to collapse, but it did play a pivotal part and was the spark that ignited it all. And of course, this Great Depression, which affected nations like Germany the most, led to certain people getting in power, which led to the greatest conflict in human history.
Right. So this guy is saying that America is responsible for World War II. He's saying that America created Adolf and caused World War II. That is a very interesting thing for someone who is talking about revisionist history to say, don't you think? And this person who wants a ton of immigrants and who moved to the UK, well, if you look at what he's favorited here in the comments, 13,000 comments on this, and they are all in agreement with them. The world is not getting tired. It's fed up. He liked that. We went from superpower to stupid power. He liked that. Empires always collapse and disappear. Always. He liked that. Isn't that interesting? Because you see, America, you can debate that it's an empire. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't. But the UK is definitely, unequivocally, irrefutably, incontrovertibly an empire. A much older empire than America, and a much weaker empire than America. An empire that you moved to be with your wife, an empire that you want a bunch of immigrants to come into, an empire that you don't want a military to defend. And you're liking a comment about how empires always collapse and disappear. I can only wonder, Jay Valey, who's going to defend your wife when all of your dreams come true? Or maybe you'll suck it up and move back to the USA. Who knows? But I did think it was an interesting contrast between the other two. You have Jay Valey, who was born in California and raised in Colorado, and so left-wing that he left the USA for the UK, and then used his YouTube channel to talk a ton of crap about America, insisting that they started World War II for some reason. Then you have Congressman Brandon Gill, born in New Mexico, and he's a congressman of Texas who is very right-wing. Again, I'm not going to put words in his mouth here because I don't follow him really, so I don't know how right-wing he is, but he seems seems pretty basic Texas right-wing, I would say. And then you have Senator Elissa Slotkin, born in New York City and is the senator of Michigan, who is sort of somewhere in the middle based off of her Planet 10 comment, where she doesn't think anything from the coasts works in the center, and she thinks the center is better than the coast, so she can't really be super left-wing, because then she'd just be agreeing with whatever California said, right? Though she's clearly more left than she thinks based off of her videos, like this one here about Roe versus Wade being a cautionary tale, as if America never got anything wrong. Was freeing the slaves also a cautionary tale? Maybe glorifying abortion and hypersexualizing females was a tiny error to the tune of 73 million lives per year, not to mention a totally destroyed dating structure, a family structure, any kind of reproduction rates in the country, nosediving, military nosediving. I mean, maybe we just made a mistake there. In any case, I find it interesting how very different these three are. Personally, I think anti-America is a very easy concept to follow. Doing what's best for your country is the obvious goal of a politician. So why are we paying for Guatemalans to have transgender surgeries? Why are we paying for Iraq to have a new season of Sesame Street? Why are we giving medicine to the people in the heart of Africa who are ruled by corrupt officials who will pocket everything and psychotic warlords who care more about bullets than food? Meanwhile, in our own country, we have people who can't afford that very medicine. Wasn't that how Elissa's YouTube channel started? Insulin prices? Fair cost of medicine is very pro-American, or pro-anything if you happen to be from that country. Helping nations that truly need it is very pro-American. It's very American-ish, I think. Venezuela, for instance, is currently being rocked by, I think it's called the Doublet earthquake. I'd never heard of it before now, and we are sending aid, as far as I'm aware, which is obviously a good thing to do, especially considering the recent history. Being the world's babysitter, however, and turning everything fake and gay with gender-swapped Disney stories and mental health fetishization is some sort of weird Illuminati scheme. The source of the disease will succumb before anyone else does, and I'd rather us heal ourselves. Rather, healing ourselves heals others too, and we see the massive shift in political alignment in South America happening without our oxygen-deprived fingers in their pie, so maybe a little bit less America does help other people. And so what's the end goal of this anti-American segregation that America itself is doing? Do you think the Democrats will merely implode? Will they join the fold? Will they transform into something else entirely? Will there be a civil war? I think we're seeing something pretty historic right now in America, even though it might not seem like it might seem like an everyday thing. This obsession with socialism is causing a great divide in the Democrats. They did not budge when black replaced white, or female, male, or Islam, Christianity. But with communism replacing capitalism, well, this is producing results that no obsessing over race, gender, or identity could do. Because in the end, politicians trust their bank accounts to protect them and their families. And now, the hyper-left are coming for their money. The hostility towards the so-called Epstein class will rise, as will violence. But on the other hand, what remains is a merging of the more sane Democrats and the Republicans, creating a stronger America. I mean, just imagine what this country could do for itself if not for all the divisiveness, and if we're well off, we could do more to help others. It's the change itself that scares me the most, and I've said it before, but maybe the point of all this change isn't to actually change America, but rather the change itself. To create anarchy, generations that do not think or act the same way other generations do, because the political climate evolves so rapidly, parents different from their children who are different from their grandchildren. Either way, that's what the extreme left wants, and so on the topic of anti-America, I feel like I must condemn them for that. I believe this accusation is their kryptonite, as I said, partly because they will not leave this country they claim to hate, and partly because I believe that many of them are nationalists who do want America to be great, but are merely misguided in their approach. I believe the accusation of being anti-America drives them as wild as they thought the weird accusation roiled Republicans. In this sense, I don't say it simply to anger them, as some sort of hollow victory, but rather I hope that the anger they feel when being called anti-American might guide them towards an answer. What is anti-American? The modern Democrats. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please do the YouTube things.